Hi, I want to try and process an awareness that I have that I can do things in one area and I can't in another. And the reason I'm sharing it on my quieter channel and on my channel which I would consider has a more spiritual slant is because I think it's always valuable to share things as you go through them, because then other people can see the sort of processing that goes on and therefore perhaps relate it to their processing as well, but also because you can get feedback, and so I would welcome feedback. And it relates to being successful in certain aspects of life and what success might actually mean. I'm aware that I have certain things, certain aspects of what I do, what I like to do, what I want to make a living out of, what I have made a living out of, where I may be quite confident, but I see success as something dangerous or unacceptable in some ways, and I think I know the reason for that. When I do anything which involves my intellect or my specific intellectual qualifications or experience, I don't really have any problems. I can, I've made a living out of and was encouraged to make a living out of, and this is where we start getting to the nub of the thing, to make a living out of using my mind and helping other people in that sense. And I have absolutely no kind of stumbling blocks to doing that. I mean, obviously there are stumbling blocks in the sense of, there are still things I don't know, because there are always still things you don't know. There's always things that you will be better at than others. There's some things that I like to do, and there's some things I prefer to avoid because I am not very good at them. And I have absolutely no issue with not being good at certain things either. But when it comes to creative activities, I don't exactly self-sabotage, but there's something in me that seems to resist making a living out of it, even though I want to, or I point myself in that direction. And I think the reason is because when I was younger, when I was a child, I did want to be an artist, and what an artist means, covers a multitude of things, doesn't it? It covers all sorts of aspects of expression. So I'm not just talking about a painting artist, though, as most of you will know at least. That's one of the things that I do and love to do and love to share. But I was steered very actively away from doing that. I was at the top of the class when I did A-level art, and I wanted to go to art college, but I was also reasonably good at other things, and I had an interest in psychology, and my parents in a very kind of clever way leaned on me to pursue the psychology rather than the art. And there were lots of kind of little hints and things said that suggested that you had to be really, really good to make it in the arts, and that as far as they were concerned, I wasn't quite good enough, even though at 16, 17 you're nowhere near as good as you're going to get. And the whole point of going to art college is so that you can get as good as you can be. And I've painted and drawn and been creative since I was absolutely tiny. So there is this kind of blockage in my head made by those sort of endless drip, drip, drip of conditioning of, no, you can't do this, you're not good enough to do this. it's impossible to make a living out of. You shouldn't be asking for money for it. And there's also another element where my mother was very keen on giving, to a ridiculous degree, giving in a sacrificial kind of a way, so that you were somehow worthier if you were giving to others but not making any money out of it. And so in my mind, when I complete a piece of work, even though I know the very long time it takes me to do it, and that my time is worth something, it's always been easier for me to give it away or to do it for somebody else, and have the pleasure of giving it to them. And I do get a lot of pleasure out of giving, there's no two ways about it, but that is not just about that, is it? And that's in all sorts of other ways of doing things, like photography, making videos, etc, etc, etc. There's this massive divide in my head which says this is what you can make a living out of, and this is what you're not allowed to make a living out of, or this is what you're not allowed to be successful at. There were other issues in terms of success as well. I am quite shy by nature, but that was kind of piled on top of, in terms of that, don't draw attention to yourself, don't be visible, and I was told, if I did kind of put myself out there too much, or ask for things, or want things, or be sort of passionate about things, that was selfish. I'm making it out as if my parents were ghastly, and they weren't at all. They were lovely people, complex people, but lovely people, and of course they had their frailties and foibles and weaknesses and vulnerabilities and fears. And fears for me, there were things that they didn't want me to do, not because they didn't want me to have a good life or enjoy myself, but because they were fearful that down those routes led issues, difficulties and disappointment. But at this point in my life, I either get over that and let that go and move on from it and dare to push myself forward in these areas of life as much as I have, and have a sort of level of confidence as much as I have done in other areas of life and been successful in, or I start bothering. Well, I suppose I could carry on doing what I've always done, but it kind of feels counterproductive now. I mean, a lot of artists have a similar tendency, in that most artists, or there's a lot of artists don't make much money during their lifetime with their work, and you have the kind of elitist artist who is only about making money, or about kind of being the in thing, producing work that the wealthy want, and therefore throwing vast amounts of money at you. And while I'm not against people throwing vast amounts of money at me, I don't want to be part of an elite. I want to be, whatever I do, to be accessible to anybody, and for people not to consider me somehow terribly more important than anybody else, which is again what the elite seem to imagine themselves to be. And I may be as vulnerable to if it happened to me as anybody else. So yes, this is something I need to get beyond. I said to an online friend a little while ago that there was perhaps nothing that I needed yet left to process, but this is definitely something. I've actually noticed something else, and I've invariably ended up eating my words when I say things like that, and I'm happy to do that. But this I do need to work my way through and come out the other side and make that leap from being held in and locked in and closed down and not wanting to make a living or wanting to hide away. I think that would be good for me. So if any of you have any thoughts on that or personal experiences of that, then your input would be gratefully received. Thank you.